my stream. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm going to use a bit of a dynamic format and play out movies as well in between to give a bit more insight on the empowering Mittelstand strategy. So let me just go through 1 second. So my name is Dafne Sanac. At Indus, responsible for investor relations, and now I'm going to present the strategy Empowering Mittelstand for the ones that haven't heard the update in March, and a bit on the H1 numbers and a bit of the outlook. So let's just go into the presentation. So basically, first of all, we need to make clear what's Indus. Indus is like a Mittelstand holding. Basically, Indus is buying companies in the small and medium-sized sector with a strong engineering focus, meaning that all of the companies have an engineering value chain, and this is structured around 3 segments: engineering, infrastructure, and materials. In contrast to maybe other holding companies, Indus is not a finance holding, so to speak. Most of the majority of the management board is consisting of engineers that know their businesses and know how to identify these niche companies that have promising growth prospects for the future. So long-term sustained growth, focus on engineering, that's like empowering Mittelstand. So as I just indicated, this is the, well, you can see some pictures on top, the management board. It's, well, in the financial markets, you use the terminology evergreen financial investor, listed on the SDAX, exactly looking for succession plans. Basically, there are a lot of companies in Germany looking for a successor, and maybe there is not a son or a daughter that wants to take over the business. And then Indus wants to become the #1 haven for these companies. You know, it's also about strengthening the brand. Indus for these small and medium-sized companies that basically looking for a successor. It's very important, as I said before, to understand the business. That's why we emphasize operating in niche markets. Indus wants to grow to achieve 3 billion in sales in 2030, and thereof 600 million through acquisitions. And a small view on the numbers here: 1.7 billion sales was generated in 2024, and Indus is present in 30 countries. Why we want to strengthen also our international footprint. So that's the board of management. So now, when I play the movie, you might also identify the pictures of these management board members. So CEO of engineering is Axel Meyer, who has been with other manufacturing companies beforehand. COO infrastructure is Dr. Jörn Großmann, who has a PhD in engineering. And material solutions is Gudrun Degenhardt, who has a history also from Thyssen. And the central functions are managed by Dr. Johannes Schmidt and Rudolf Weichert, who have both like over 10 to 15 years experience at Indus. So basically, this is just an overview. What do the segments inherit? What does it actually mean? Engineering covers from software solutions to mechanical engineering, from building components to structural solutions is infrastructure, and material solutions includes from micro optics to wear tools, which is very important because material solutions is not only consisting of metals or materials processing, but also a small amount of companies are anchored in the medical field, but they're working on materials like lenses or formerly on fabrics. So these are the 3 segments. Like in revenue size, nearly equally big, but in margin size also dynamic and different seasoning. But I will go further into detail when I talk about the numbers. So we talked about the numbers: 1.7 billion sales, adjusted EBITDA of 154 million euro in 2024. And Indus is also putting a strong focus on its balance sheet, so around keeping the leverage between 2 and 2.5 times EBITDA. And important to keep in mind that Indus is strongly free cash flow generative and has generated nearly 200 million of free cash flow in 2023 and 135 million in 2024. The guidance for 2025 is over 90 million. So now I think for the previous presenter, Matthias or Mario, you've asked, why should you invest in the stock? So this is like, I let you read maybe the long sentences, but maybe look at the red highlighted key buzzwords. So this is like basically, why should you buy an Indus stock? So basically, you have the diversified portfolio and access to sophisticated industrial engineering. The portfolio is resilient as such as it's geographically and in terms of its segments diversified. Basically, Indus is ambitious to acquire and is acquiring very successfully and attractive companies. And it has an active portfolio development, meaning that we have, I call them in-house consultants. We have like 3 or 4 experts that look at operational excellence, market excellence, innovation, sustainability, and also new venture clienting, which is all this active portfolio development to grow the businesses. Profitability and solid free cash flow as a guarantee for regular dividend payments. Important to point out, Indus has never not paid dividends. There was always a dividend payment, and Indus will continue to do so. And obviously, I mean, like, you will not have access to these niche companies via the capital market. Instead, you have to invest in Indus or a holding company. Otherwise, you might not get the access. So this is the overall investment case. Why should you buy an Indus stock? This is what you have to look at. Now I want to go into detail about what does it mean empowering Mittelstand. That's the new strategy. Well, new March. I mean, I'm just talking to the people that might not have had the opportunity to look at the materials. So it's based on 3 pillars. Beforehand, it was Parcours Perform or Parcours. And now we've renamed the strategy into Empowering Mittelstand to actually distill the growth drivers, which is empowering internationalization, empowering M&A, and empowering technology. Obviously, Indus wants to grow, but organically as well as via acquisitions. And international growth can go by 2 ways. Either we want to grow on portfolio level, meaning that one of the companies we own might want to expand in a certain market, for instance, the US, and itself will buy or itself will identify an M&A target. So this will be fully international. But on holding level, we expand towards Europe. And we're also thinking about basically, and I will talk about this in more detail, to divest maybe here and there if companies do not match the growth prospects anymore of Indus. So keeping in mind internationalization on portfolio level, international, holding level more towards Europe, not only Germany focused. So empowering M&A, I just talked about, this is just the budget, investing around 500 million until 2030 to come to the 3 billion. And empowering technology, I initially said something about venture clienting. You can also look at the topic of AI, and basically AI is also included in the value chain of the one and the other company, for instance, Simon and BTEC, in terms of recycling processes and in terms of identifying reusable material, for instance. But all of this should happen without a capital increase, just financed by free cash flow and additional net debt, but keeping the ratio below 2.5 times EBITDA. This is just, I'm just looking at the clock there. This is just basically an example of what we did. Expansion of capacities in the US through acquisition of MedFab HBS subsidiary. I would recommend that you look at our companies online and look at the website. And then you get a better grasp of what each of the companies will do. So these are just some examples that we've highlighted here in the presentation, and we've already done 5 add-on acquisitions that have been particularly small. So the spending was only 22 million, I think, in the first half of the year. So there will be some acquisitions coming on portfolio level and on holding level. So here you can see what I've initially talked about. Sweden, obviously, and increasing the footprint there for our portfolio companies in the infrastructure segment, and also expanding the footprint in the US via MedFab and HBS. And then I talked a bit about venture clienting. This is something new, and we have someone that's actually from Gestalt Robotics, the managing director or the interim managing director. She came to the holding company to actually support with setting up a venture clienting program, which helps startups obviously to launch their ideas in a cooperation process and a collaboration with the portfolio companies without any M&A transaction. It's more a collaborative space. So I think now maybe it's important to get a bit of a grasp of how actually Indus works. I'll play a movie. 1 second, this works.
Das Segmentmanagement bei Indus bietet Nähe. Wir sind sehr, sehr eng dran an unseren Beteiligungen und verstehen die Herausforderungen.
Die Trends sind ganz klar im Bereich des Infrastrukturausbaus. Wenn wir uns das ganze Thema Energiewende ansehen, dann hängt damit eben auch der Ausbau der Stromnetze und Infrastrukturnetze auch stark zusammen. Das macht eigentlich so den Thrill aus, von traditionell bis hochmodern eigentlich auch alles abzudecken.
Es gibt technologische Trends, da geht natürlich viel in Richtung Digitalisierung, also Digitalisierung der Produkte, der Prozesse, aber auch der Geschäftsmodelle an sich.
Wir lieben Werkstoffe, aber wir bieten mehr als Werkstoffe. Deswegen haben wir aus Materials Material Solutions gemacht. Wir haben uns ein sehr sportliches M&A-Programm gegeben.
Double-Digit EBIT-Marge ist eine Grundvoraussetzung, um zur Indus als Akquisition mit dazuzugehören.
Das gilt aber auch für Ergänzungsakquisitionen, das heißt also Zukäufe für bestehende Portfoliounternehmen.
Wir möchten wachsen.
Es ist für uns ein wesentliches Wachstumsthema, auch noch stärker in die Internationalisierung zu gehen.
Das heißt, wir gehen auch mit Entwicklung, mit Produktion, mit Service in ausländische Märkte, dort wo auch vermehrt unsere Kunden sitzen. Damit ist man in der Regel reaktionsschneller, kostengünstiger und auch resilienter gegen beispielsweise Zölle oder sonstige Beeinträchtigungen.
Die Basis ist eben, dass man den anderen kennt, man weiß, der lässt einen nicht hängen.
Wir haben aktuell zum Beispiel bereits 13 Beteiligungen in den USA. Wenn heute jemand dort investieren will, findet er Kollegen, die ihn mit vielen Fragestellungen bereits unterstützen können. Technologiekompetenz ist uns sehr, sehr wichtig, weil sie die Zukunft beschreibt.
Wir haben im Segment Engineering 6 Technologiefelder definiert. Wir versuchen dort die Stärken zu bündeln. Ein Beispiel, wir haben das Technologiefeld Fluidtechnik. Das Handling von Wasserstoff ist sehr anspruchsvoll, was Temperatur und was Drücke betrifft. Und da ist es gelungen, mit Produktneuentwicklungen beispielsweise sich weltweit einen Namen zu machen.
Künstliche Intelligenz ist für mittelständische Unternehmen das, was für uns als Individuum ein Smartphone ist. Und das heißt echte Veränderung.
Wichtig ist, dass man auf die Spielfläche kommt, einen möglichst niedrigschwelligen Einstiegswert einfach auch bietet und ja, quasi so einen Personal Trainer an der Tür klopft.
Wir helfen nicht mit bunten Folien, sondern wir helfen mit konkreten Anwendungen.
Die Fülle der Herausforderungen, die auf ja, unsere mittelständischen Unternehmen zukommen, sind groß, aber mit der Unterstützung auch der Indus und ja, unserem Spirit, den wir haben, wird uns das gut gelingen.
So now I'll go over to talk a bit more about the financials. So for everyone to estimate how the first half of the year has actually developed. So let me just go into detail of the first half of the year. So it's quite a long way back, right? Because now we have October and now it's the fourth quarter. But let's just summarize the highlights of the first half going until the 30th of June. So obviously it's a tough environment, and nevertheless the H1 sales have been at previous year's level, despite the continuing weak economy, and Q2 has even been stronger than previous year. And obviously challenges at that time have been the US tariffs and Chinese export controls, and obviously the weak dollar weighs on the adjusted EBITDA. To finance further growth, like Indus has placed a promissory note of 125 million, and we've recently confirmed the forecast, which you can see below, because we've lowered it earlier in the year. So let me just quickly go through the segments. And overall, through incoming orders, I will just do a summary, and then maybe you can look at the slides overall. I mean, the order backlog looks very good, like with the 5% increase, and this is basically due to the good development of the segment engineering. Nevertheless, this is an outlook that goes towards the next year as well, and not particularly towards the fourth quarter, because if you monitor how the sector is development, engineering is actually well, not a dynamic sector at the moment. So I just want to indicate that the order book development looking forward to the next year, and because contracts are planned long forward, is positive, but nevertheless we are hesitant to say the same for the entire year. So next slide, maybe we'll have a look at. I just pointed out about the revenue of the first half year that was nearly stable, the guidance, and the adjusted EBITDA obviously dropped like 24%, but we are expecting a recovery in H2 because most of the segments are more like back-end loaded. That's the terminology you usually use. So to look at the free cash flow, it's important because we are saying that we basically want to achieve over 90 million in 2025, and the free cash flow has been at -8 million at the half year. This is due to the working capital dynamics, and basically to the course of the business. But you have to keep in mind that businesses are not running at their highest capacity and not at their highest opportunities. So basically in the end you can also withdraw some investments and basically therefore steer out free cash flow to achieve the over 90 million in 2025. Balance sheet is in good shape because as you see, net debt, equity ratio, obviously net debt has gone up because here and there we've done some acquisitions, we've taken out or we refinanced. The equity ratio is still at 38%, but overall leverage is still between 2 and 2.5 times EBITDA. I'm not going to talk too much about the details of each segment because this is going to take too much of our time, but what you have to keep in mind is, let's look at the outlook, basically the guidance. This is a good picture to look at because engineering, as I said, is a bit it's a difficult environment. So overall, we confirmed our guidance, but we changed a bit the each of the segment parts. So consistent, meaning we lowered it for the adjusted EBITDA, and for material solutions, we increased the sales and we increased the adjusted EBITDA assumption. because this is also due to, if you follow the ad hoc messaging, to BTOIC being in trouble about the tungsten supply, which has now, well, being solved for 2025, but obviously conditions are tough. So overall, confirming the guidance with different components, engineering, challenging environment, infrastructure, we left the guidance as it is, and material solutions slightly improved. One nice illustration about our dividends. I talked about our dividend policy that Indus has never not paid dividends. So you can have a look at this, and the dividend yield has been 5.9% in 2024, but also due to share buyback programs we've done, yeah. This is the shareholder structure, a very stable shareholder structure, and around 50%, I'd say, is free float, because you don't see everything that's here on this picture. And overall, it's a diversified shareholder base in its free float by the countries of Scandinavia, USA, and Germany. And what I think is a good opportunity, if I could ask you, Matthias, just to play the second movie about the financials quickly.
Wir haben große Ziele für 2030, 3 Milliarden Umsatz, 11% EBITDA-Marge, 330 Millionen Adjusted EBITDA, 4,50 € Earnings per Share. Das ist unser Niveau, was wir uns für 2030 vorstellen. Zukäufe spielen eine sehr, sehr große Rolle. Wir reden ja von über 500 Millionen, die wir in den nächsten 5 Jahren für Zukäufe ausgeben werden. Das wird ein ansteigender Betrag sein. Nach unserem Modell können wir das wesentlich aus unserem internen Kraft heraus finanzieren. Wachsen aus eigener Kraft bedeutet natürlich auch, die Mittel dafür aufnehmen zu können. Da sind unsere Leitplanken die wir schon immer hatten. Also eine solide Eigenkapitalquote, wir geben uns das Ziel 40%, und natürlich ein Net Debt EBITDA Ratio, eine Entschuldungsdauer von kleiner 2,5 Jahren, weil das der beste Indikator für ein Investment Grade ist. Das ist ja auch ein Kernelement von Indus, dass wir wie ein guter Kaufmann ein Unternehmen erwerben. Das kommt ja in eine sehr solide finanzierte Gruppe und muss sich darum keine Sorgen machen. Kurzfristig sind wir immer in der Lage, das Target an Bord zu nehmen, was wir wünschen. Was ist die Dividendenpolitik der Indus? Wir sagen, wir wollen unsere Aktionäre auch unterjährig, wenn die langfristig nachhaltig investiert sind, am Erfolg der Indus teilhaben lassen. Also ist unsere Maßgabe zwischen 40% und 50% des AG-Ergebnisses. Das ist der Kern der Indus, das war er immer schon, und es gibt keinen Grund, daran zu rütteln.
If you have any questions, please send them to investor.relations@indus.de. And I'm also happy to answer questions just now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The first question was regarding the dividend. Is there a minimum dividend, and have you ever decreased the dividend?
There is not a minimum dividend, so to speak, but we want to pay out up to 50% of the net income of the so-called Einzelabschluss, the net income of the Indus Holding AG, and we slightly reduced dividend from 2021 to 2022 from €1.05 to 80 cents. But basically, there has never been a year where there has been no dividend, exactly.
And you have expanded now to the Scandinavian region. Will that part of the world remain a focus area? Will you expand over there? And what have you learned from it?
Yes, definitely. In the end, the Mittelstand idea is also very present in Scandinavia, which might be surprising if you haven't done your research, but it will definitely be a target area. What have you learned, or what have we learned? I think Indus has a very professional M&A process with paying attractive multiples from our point of view, obviously. And therefore, I think it just confirmed to continue on that path, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And with so many international companies and subsidiaries, how do you manage to maintain this Mittelstandsculture?
Yeah, exactly. It's very important to maintain this culture. In the end, that the management board isn't aloof of the daily business without interfering too much. That's the art of the science, so to speak. So in the end, they cultivate the exchange. Like they have each of the board management members that look out for their segments, have segment meetings, want to cultivate the exchange between the subsidiaries, but don't intervene too much in the daily business to keep the Mittelstands character or Mittelstands features. To not interfere in daily business, but keep the eye on the general development, on the future, on the perspective until 2030. Yes.
Okay, so it's already 11:30. I will already promote Tobias Bodermeier of SDM to the stage, but maybe Dafne, you can give one last summary of Indus Holding. What can you say to the investors?
Yeah, exactly. Indus, I think, is very interesting if you're looking for a dividend paying company and a story that's basically long term, like looking at a long term growth and prospect towards 2030.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.